Welcome Mataran. In our last video, we created this gome-like pattern using the pattern handout and measurements. Now we're going to make our Salwar pattern or pants pattern. Using the same measurements, we're still using a 4-inch grid. So each one of our squares here represents 4 inches. That's just to ensure that this fits on the paper nicely. And we also want to have the date, the name of the person the pattern is for, and of course label your pattern. You'll see that with the Salwar or pants, we're using angled lines, and we're going to start off with our straight lines, and I'm actually going to draw this straight on the paper so that we're using the grid to its best advantage to ensure that this comes out as a nice, neat pattern. I'm also only going to draw one leg, because this is an identical pattern for the left and the right. So I'd like to get this squared nicely, so I'm going to start with where my first square will be. Then I'm measuring I, which I had already divided these by 4 for my actual measurements. So this would be 10.75, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then come down 3/4 of a square. Then for the waist, which actually has a bend here, but we're using half of that distance to go to the side. And since I'm only drawing one side, instead of dividing that by 2, I actually want to divide that again. So I had 7.25 as far as the number of squares, but I will reduce that to probably 3.75 just to give it enough space. Then coming down to the ankle, this is another straight angle, so we have 90-degree angles here. The ankle was going to be M, which was one ankle divided by 2, and then I've divided it by 4, so that's coming out to 1.8. So I'm going just shy of 2. You see I'm starting to get the outer portion of the leg here, and then I want to drop down for this measurement, but I actually want to use not only that inseam, but I'm going to use the hip here. So largest point being hip or waist. That actually was the same as what we had for the waist here, but I'd like to take the hip. So here I'd taken hip or waist plus 4 inches. I believe I did the 54, 58 divided by 2 to 29. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that, but I'm going to give us a little bit of an angle heading over, but I want to make sure this is matching our inseam. And I'd like to show you how to balance these two angles if you're swinging the fabric outward. So I'm going to take my measurement K, which in this case is 7.75. I'm just going to count that so that I have an idea of what that is on my ruler. 2, 4, 6, 7.75. Okay, that's going to be my K measurement. And then I also want L, which was the drop for the rise, which was 4.75. So again, just counting that to make sure that I have those two measures. So in this case, if I want to use the ruler to swing this amount, I'm going to 1 1/8 and I'm going to, that outer leg was 1/8 shy of 2. So you can see here how I gave myself kind of a tick mark to see what I was aiming for. And there I kind of balanced the difference. I got both of my distances to match, angling outward. So that gives me my basic pants pattern. If you'd like to add this period piecing, so this is a seam that we see on some of the extant garments, is this extra dotted line seam. I could go in here and determine where I'd like that to be. And you could also do that seaming or piecing based on how you're piecing your fabric. So I could add that extra piece in. And then generally we see a solid, separate solid cotton waistband sewn on. And so I'd like that waistband to be 2 inches. And if I chose to make that a separate piece, I would want that to be 2 inches folded over. So I'm going to go at least this distance. But I'm making that double because I will cut this all in one piece. Just labeling the parts, so that's our rise. This is the inseam, the outseam. I also could choose to add a little bit on the cuff. So this could turn and come outward and come down just a bit if I wanted to add a little bit to fold my cuff in order to top stitch. Sometimes we see the ankle cuff folded up and top stitched in rows. It's sort of like quilting, so it reinforces and makes a nice cuff band around the ankle. We also see on some of the extant garments, this is large enough to go over the heel, but then it has some buttons and a set of loops. And those are able to kind of cinch that ankle down so that it fits nice and neat around the ankle. And that's all there is to our Salwar pattern. One more item to note on our Salwar pattern. You could be using this, if you're using this with a print or something that you want to align, you can certainly do that. But I also wanted to note that what works easiest is to actually have your fold of your fabric here. So we want to annotate what we're cutting. That always indicates a fold. So here I would say cut 2 on fold. And this waistband also would be cut 1 on the fold. So just one extra note, you can also choose to put in a crotch gusset. So you could opt to do perhaps a long diamond shape, works really nicely. Or as I said, you could have this piecing. We also sometimes see the piecing a little further in. So you can just add yourself a little bit of extra there, which is nice if you want to be able to squat and have extreme movement available in your Salwar. Happy sewing!